Welcome to City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Courtney Nelson, president of City Club. For over 100 years, City Club of Portland is where civic-minded people come together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and explore. We're gathered here at the Sentinel Hotel, along with all of you listening on OPB radio or viewing on OpenSignal or YouTube. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners enables us to put on the state's best civic programs week after week. Our media partner is Oregon Business Magazine, and our current Friday Forum sponsors are Family Care Health, Northwest Health Foundation, and Northwest Natural. Please join me in showing appreciation for them. And now on to our program today. For new President Mark Mitsui, Portland Community College is fundamentally about the transformative power of education for both individuals and communities. He has said, quote, "Community colleges are the pathway to the middle class. That is where opportunity lives. We strive to foster equitable success for students and colleagues and a sustainable prosperity for the region." Mark's tenure at PCC began in the fall of 2016. Previously, he served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community Colleges within the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education for the U.S. Department of Education under President Obama. He is the former president of North Seattle College and Vice President of Student Services at South Seattle College. He has deep roots here in the Northwest. Portland Community College is among the largest community colleges in the United States, with nearly 80,000 students and a budget of over $450 million. Probably feels like $450. PCC's campuses, 4 campuses now span 3 counties. We're going to hear from Mark. He's going to make a few remarks, and then he's going to be interviewed by Cheryl Myers, who is the Director of Culture and Inclusion at Oregon Higher Education Coordinating Commission. Cheryl was previously the Governor's Director of Economic and Business Equity. Please join me in welcoming PCC President Mark Mitsui.
You all look so good, I'm going to take a picture. Hang on, hang on. My advancement AVP would kill me if I didn't do that, so. Thank you, Courtney. Appreciate the introduction, and City Club and Friday Forum organizers for allowing me to be at the podium today. I also would like to thank the Portland Community College Board of Directors. If you are a director for PCC, would you mind standing and being recognized? Sorry to embarrass you, but we are also joined here today with several illustrious electeds, and I would like to acknowledge the only mayor to ascend Mount Everest that I'm aware of, Mayor Ted Wheeler, City of Portland. And a great friend, the mayor of Hillsborough, Steve Calloway. Steve, where are you? Another champion of education, Denny Doyle, mayor of Beaverton. And a warrior for higher education in Salem, Ben Cannon of Heck. Where are you? We also have with us Senator Mark Haas, who has led the way with the Oregon Promise. As well as State Rep Diego Hernandez, also an advocate for equity. And Metro Council President Tom Hughes is here, a friend of PCC. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to begin with a bit of a personal story, and it really starts with my grandparents. My grandparents on my mom's side came from Japan, and they came over and became farmers. On my dad's side, Grandpa Mitsui came over to work on the railroads. Because of the laws of the time and the policies, they were not allowed to become naturalized U.S. citizens. And for most of their lives, they lived here in the United States. They were not U.S. citizens. And because of that, they weren't able to elect their own representation. And in Washington State, the state legislature passed what were called alien land laws, which made it illegal for anybody to lease property to anybody of Japanese ancestry. And my mother's family were farmers, and that wiped them out. So they became sharecroppers in the Yakima Valley, traveling from farm to farm. And my grandfather had interesting negotiation skills. He actually negotiated with the Yakima Nation because they were exempt from the alien land laws because of their sovereign status. So he was able to lease property through the nation. And so they were able to reestablish their farm and to grow from there. Then World War II broke out, and Mom and her family were actually brought here to Portland. I just learned this recently. They were held, I guess it was called the Delta Park at the time, and it's the Expo Center, Livestock Expo Center at the time, for about 3 months before they were transferred to Heart Mountain, Wyoming. And Dad and his family were sent to Tule Lake. Dad volunteered. He joined the United States Army out of camp, served, and then after the war went to school on the GI Bill, and then Mom, after the war, went to school as well. And that changed their lives, their trajectories from Heart Mountain and Tule Lake to the University of Washington, transformed their lives, and by extension mine as well. I don't think I'd be standing here today if they hadn't done what they did. And that forever underscored for me the transformative power of education. And it also created for me this sort of image of college that I would always want to go. It had this sort of Hogwarts kind of aura to it. It was a magical place where you would go and all the secrets of the universe would be unveiled to you. For everybody who was willing to work hard enough could afford to go. Astronomy, you'd learn the secrets of the universe. Anatomy and physiology, the secrets of the human body. You'd meet people from far away and exotic places like Spokane. And it was an opportunity to really open doors that I hadn't experienced before. Well, Mom and Dad, when they got married, after they met, they moved to Beacon Hill, which is kind of the Asian American part of Seattle, and I was born there actually on the same day that the satellite Sputnik was launched. Does anybody here remember Sputnik or know what Sputnik? Okay, great. Some audiences I kind of have to explain. But my father at the time was a new engineer at Boeing. He went to the hospital more excited about Sputnik than me. And he announced to my mother that they were going to name me, he wanted to name me Sputnik. It's true story. Sputnik Mitsui, president of Portland Community College. I mean, the Nick would have been fine, but my mother, bless her heart, put her foot down and said, "Over my dead body, will you name our son Sputnik?" And my life was saved. Well, that was my Sputnik moment. But as that rocket arced into space, it not only set off a space race, but an education race as well, right? Suddenly we were going to outright outcalculate the former Soviet Union and regain the educational high ground. And we were going to do it, again, primarily through education. It's when the term moonshot literally entered the lexicon of organizational development. We were going to be the first nation to send somebody to the moon and bring them back safely to Earth. Well, it's interesting how the world of education orbits around moments like that. If we fast forward to today and take a look at this moment in time and where we're at, we actually have slipped a bit. Again, we are number 11 in the world among young folks within our society with a post-secondary education. We're behind Luxembourg and Lithuania, for example. We take a look at our current condition here in Portland, that in the midst of an unprecedented economic recovery with impressive wage growth, we also have significant challenges in terms of disparities in income and also educational outcomes and a gentrification going through the center of our service area that sort of pushes folks to the outer edges of our service area. So what can we do? So at Portland Community College, we have rededicated ourselves to opportunity and equitable student success, to change the trajectory of our students' lives that arcs into the middle class, to help more families and students achieve escape velocity out of poverty into the middle class and beyond through education and training. We're starting with data. We're taking a look at our skills gaps in our regions. We're looking at building partnerships on the foundation of strong partnerships we already have, and with employers and with public entities. We're addressing college readiness in terms of our placement and assessment strategies, and we're also working on helping to address the significant unmet needs that our students experience. We say, those of us who work with our students every day know our students are one sick kid and one flat tire away from dropping out. So what kind of support can we do through integration of federal benefits, for example, through public-private partnership, through philanthropy to help our students not only get here, but also to succeed? We are a great investment for this. So we had our own Sweet 16 moment this year. We found out that we are in the top 16 in the nation among all higher ed institutions for associate degree production. We are actually in the top 10. We're number 9 among community colleges, and there are about roughly 1,000 public community colleges in the country. The Portland Business Journal took a look at college scorecard data and found that we, among 21 higher education institutions in the state, have the best ratio of wages earned to tuition paid for students. And in addition to that, we know that for every dollar our career and technical education students spend, they receive a $7.10 return upon when they graduate. And we also know that this is great for the state because we are able each year through our graduates to add about $183 million to the tax base. We also have a variety of different effective partnerships through Future Connect with City of Portland, Beaverton, and Hillsborough as an example, with very high retention rates for the students who have their success coaches and scholarships. We have a career pathway initiative that also has about a 94% completion rate with a 74% placement in field of study. This really, though, is about our students, because behind every point in a report, every line on a graph represents a life change for the better, a family uplifted, and a community transformed. I just want to very quickly end with a story about a student by the name of Judy. Came to Portland Community College at the age of 42. After many years outside of the classroom, a mother of 3, she had been a victim of domestic violence for years. She escaped the situation with her kids, but desperately needed a job. Without any formal education, this was an impossibility. She was able to put her life back together through a program called New Directions at PCC. And because of this opportunity at PCC, she was able to graduate with straight A's, transfer to PSU, where she's working toward a degree in counseling. You know, our moonshot is about helping more Judys achieve their dreams. So please come join us on this mission as we look for enhancing and expanding our public and private philanthropic partnerships to help our students rebuild and reimagine our middle class in this region by creating more equitable prosperity for all, and to help us meet this, our own Sputnik moment in time. Thank you.
For those of you listening on OPB, this is City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Cheryl Myers, Director of Culture and Inclusion with the Oregon Higher Education Commission. I'm here with Mark Mitsui, the new president of Portland Community College, and he's sharing his vision for PCC. Mark, we're so thrilled to have you here, and what an impressive background you bring with you. You alluded to, in your opening comments, about a number of things, but tell us more about, drill deeper on some of those that I know you didn't have time to cover in your opening comments.
Sure. So definitely some of the challenges that students have in terms of access and completion of higher education has to do, one, with college readiness, two, with unmet financial need. And so those are two areas that we're taking a look at, and we would love to partner with a variety of folks in this room and elsewhere to help students address. On the college readiness side, one of the things we're doing is to revamp what we call our assessment and placement process. So instead of having a single high-stakes assessment that determines where students are placed, what we're doing is what we call multiple measures. We're taking a look at a variety of different indices to identify the best place to put students. And what we're finding, well, it's a little early for really concrete data, but what we're working on is to place students higher in the sequence, and so they're more likely then to complete that sequence and graduate. Unmet financial need, we're very interested in exploring the possibility of integration of federal benefits. So many of our students are housing insecure, food insecure, and if there's a way, for example, policy-wise, the state and others could make the policies easier to integrate Section 8, for example, TANF, SNAP, education and training dollars, UI, and Pell. And so we're very interested in taking a look. We have actually informational hearing in Salem on Tuesday to cover that topic and see what's possible. One of the last projects I worked on at the department was to bring 6 federal agencies together into a committee. The White House then sort of adopted it, and they really kind of pushed it over the finish line. And what they did was to create a letter that was signed by 6 cabinet secretaries and then went out to the states to inform states how they could do this.
Yeah, that total cost of attendance is really so tricky for so many of our students. President Mitsui, Oregon has long considered community colleges a key workforce development strategy, a pathway you mentioned earlier out of poverty for low-income youth and youth of color and even older adults. To what extent do you think PCC is delivering on that, and where do you see opportunities?
So it's a kind of a well-kept secret, the degree of employer engagement that PCC has had with employers over the years. Each of our programs has what are called employer advisory committees. And these are subject matter experts from the field who inform us basically what our students need to know and then hire our students when they graduate. And so, for example, out in Rock Creek, we have Caterpillar, a really strong partnership with the Caterpillar Corporation. They just donated a pretty large piece of equipment out there. They want us to expand what's called electric power generation and want us to be the West Coast training for the Caterpillar Corporation. And so there's all these hospitals, all the server farms, they all have to have backup power generation, right? And so how do you keep those generators running? So that close relationship is something we've had for a while, and you multiply that times the many other programs we have a pretty strong foundation to build on. Our challenge is funding. And so when we take a look at, for example, our nursing program, great placement rates, high graduation rates. They pass the NCLEX, the nursing exam, at very high rates. They get hired. We have enough funding for maybe 60 students, and we have wait lists in the hundreds. And so with more funding, we can produce more graduates in those fields. We have the infrastructure and the relationships in order to do that.
Any innovative ideas about that?
Well, certainly the community college system is advocating for full funding at 634 in the system. I know, Ben and others are advocating for that. And with full funding, that definitely gives us the opportunity to expand our capacity in terms of helping to bridge the skills gap. And that was the perfect time because we have jobs, right? Because there are these opportunities. And then we've got students over here who want those jobs. They don't have the training or the skills. We have employers who are dying for the skilled labor. We met with an employer probably a month and a half ago they were importing talent from the East Coast and paying their relocation costs for jobs that require less than a bachelor's degree. So, and their starting salaries, we were told, were between $60,000 and $80,000 a year before overtime with benefits. So, several light bulbs went off and said, we can work with you. Come on, let's sit down. And we did. And so Mark Goldberg, our AVP, is here. He and his shop, others across the college are working with these employers. Our CTE divisions and chairs and our deans of instruction are also working very hard to help fill those skills gaps.
Wonderful. So career and technical education is a term that's been around for a long time, but share your thoughts as far as what 21st century CTE looks like.
Well, that's a really good question because we're at that point now with technology and the skills necessary in the 21st century where we are in a place of needing to help educate and train workers for jobs that don't even exist yet. I think it was so Max and I were on a panel with Wes Moore, and I think Max Williams of OCF, and Wes said that I think the 5-year-olds right now that are entering into kindergarten, maybe the last generation that take driver's ed, right? As you take a look at all the technology that's happening. In Germany, there are now convoys of trucks and driving down the Autobahn, and only the first truck of 4 has a driver in it. As I was at the Boeing Rapid Prototyping and Modeling Lab a few years ago, and they have what they call laser sintering machines, and you get a bucket of powderized metal, you put it in, and then you program it, and then out the bottom comes landing gear that you can put into a wind tunnel model, right? So I asked, well, what skills are you looking for here? And he said, well, yeah, we want people to know material science, we want people to understand CAD, and we want them to have taken a sculpting class because they have to be able to think in 3D. So what's interesting, the National Network of Business and Industry Associations have come to a groundbreaking agreement across all sectors of what they consider to be baseline employability skills. And what's interesting is, in addition to the technical knowledge, when you look at those, they're very, very similar to our humanities and liberal arts learning outcomes. So I think we're looking at an opportunity for intersectionality between STEM and the technical fields and also some of the more traditional liberal arts. The combination of the two will be certainly what employers are looking for. The routinized work will, if it's not gone yet, will be gone soon. And it's the creative, innovative work that also has some technical component, and the combination of the two that I believe will be the hallmark of future workers.
Yeah, I think I heard a statement the other day that talked about not just jobs that don't exist, but industries that don't exist. And that's really what we're looking to as we move into the future. So it's complicated. Community colleges serve such a wide variety of students. How do you address ensuring that students have what they need, the supports they need, in addition to the academic and technical rigor that PCC provides?
Well, one of the movements, I'll say, within the community college sector is to look at things strategically and to look at systems. I think our system as a whole has grown up with the notion of a variety of choices. And what we're finding is, for example, in behavioral economics, when we're faced with a lot of choice, sometimes we don't decide at all. And so one of the areas that we're looking at, starting with data, is without really limiting choice, how can that choice be structured? The other piece is, what are the students' needs? Students come to us not only with a variety of different challenges and barriers, but some may have a higher priority than others. And there may be combinations that intersect. So if you're the first in your family to go to college, I had a student once say, Mark, you should give me a degree for getting a degree, right? Because of the systems that we often put in place around accountability and so forth that can complicate a system. So one of the things we are looking at are how are our systems student-friendly or not student-friendly? What are also the barriers around, I mentioned earlier, unmet financial need? Studies have shown that even though community college tuition is lower, which is a great deal for students, we have what we call now the new majority student, right? So most of our students are working, average age is 30, most have families, and they have a lot of expenses in order, and opportunity costs for going to school. Childcare, transportation, mortgages, or rent. So in addition to tuition, there's also the cost related to the cost of living. And so how do you help students meet those costs so they can take more credit so they can focus on school and graduate? It's no secret that if you can only take 4 or 5 credits a quarter, you're going to take a lot longer to graduate. So how do we help students through their financial assistance, integration of federal benefits, work-based learning opportunities that relate to their field of study, stay in school, take more credits, graduate faster, graduate on time?
For those of you listening on OPB, this is City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Cheryl Myers, Director of Culture and Inclusion with the Oregon Higher Education Commission. I'm here with Mark Mitsui, the new president of Portland Community College, and he's sharing his vision for PCC. You know, Mark, it's so interesting. We have such a changing dynamic in the demographics of students. You mentioned, the average age of your student. Oregon Promise has brought you a host of students coming straight out of high school. Share what that experience has been like and what you have found.
So we had about 16, maybe 1,700 students come to PCC on the Oregon Promise. And out of the 16 or so, we probably had anywhere between 700 or so, 800 students who probably would not have come otherwise. And one of the values of these kinds of Promise programs is that students begin to see themselves as college material, and particularly in families where nobody has gone to school before. I came from Seattle. South Seattle started a similar program called 13th Year, and it was amazing when students got that piece of paper to see them wave it and go home and say, Mom, I'm going to school, I'm going to college. Part of it is, hey, you have some financial means of getting here. Part of it, too, is somebody wants me, right, and sees me as being successful in school. With the Oregon Promise funding also came funding for counselors and advisors. Then those success coaches and the work that they did was phenomenal and critical. And I understand because of budget this year, we may not have those the same funding for support. Nevertheless, we still anticipate having additional students come to college who probably otherwise would not have gone to school because they have the Oregon Promise. And Senator Haas, prime mover for the Oregon Promise there, wanted to give him a shout out. And the students that we're tracking, and so we're going to take a look at the data as soon as it's available here after the first year.
Nice. I understand that relationships are really important to you, and I also have heard that you've met quite a number of students. Share with us what that's been like.
It's always a great reminder of why we do what we do, and have the opportunity to ride the shuttle, for example, and to go to the different colleges, learn that 40% of our students swirl between our campuses. And it really helps in terms of providing opportunities and not duplicating programs at the same time. And it only takes about 25 minutes to go from one campus to another with the shuttles. Also, just what students struggle with every day, how important it is to think through food insecurity. Students are couch surfing sometimes. They are also struggling to make rent quite often. And I met one young man, he worked with four other coworkers and he were living in the same apartment. And they were pooling their money to pay rent. And they were, one student was going, one of the roommates at a time was going to college. And so, housing costs and the impact on students you hear that a lot about students. So one of the things we do have some control over where we can cut costs is around textbooks. Textbooks can be really expensive. And so this year we did get a grant on open educational resources. We implemented it for one math course. And we believe and have estimated that this year alone, we're going to save students about $1 million in textbooks. So, in a variety of different ways, looking at the aggregate costs of attendance, we want to be able to help students in any way that we can. The other thing I try to do is to pop in on classes. And, not to surprise, I don't want to, but it's not a gotcha thing. It's more like to support faculty and what they do every day. And also to welcome students to the college and thank them for coming and let them know that we're glad that you're here. And I think they're appreciative, and they also are really forthright about why they're there and what they want to get. So it's always rewarding and always meaningful to spend time with students, whether it's on the bus or in the classroom.
Absolutely. And thinking about the shuttle, I was thinking about the Swan Island Trade Center. I had a chance to be at the opening of it, and what an exciting program that is. But when we look at data and metrics, and I understand that a lot of those students, for instance, in the welding program, they get snatched before they get a chance to complete and get these very wonderful, high-paying jobs. So it's associate's degrees, as you mentioned earlier, but it's also other post-secondary credentialing. Where do you see that in the landscape of Portland Community College?
Very important. The data clearly shows the more education you have, the better off you are. And so even if it's courses without a certificate, but certainly a certificate is better. And if it's a certificate and additional classes, that's better than just a certificate, but then you add on an associate's degree. The more you get, the better off you are, and the more resistant to unemployment you are during a recession. So the cumulative impact is key. So certificates are really important, particularly for those that are entering into new fields or entering in for the first time. And our Career Pathways program through our workforce development and Mark Goldberg have done an incredible job of creating these career pathways with stackable credentials to mirror the busy lives of our students, so they can come in and they can get their first certificate, they can go out, earn more money, and when they are ready for wage progression and a promotion, they come back and they don't have to start all over again. The other is that there are support services along these career pathways for students to be able to enter into these living wage jobs or to move up the career ladder. So absolutely, certificates are critical, particularly for many of our newest residents who have to pay the bills immediately, but also want to be able to access education.
Well, we love the idea of grow your own, and to be able to really focus on that student-centered piece. Do this for us. Fast forward maybe 5 or 6 years from now, and tell us how PCC looks different. Tell us how some of the things that you have hopes for.
So I could see, after a successful bond campaign next November, fantastic facilities with targeted workforce investments that position our graduates to enter into the workforce, help fill those skills gaps, and that we're reaching more diverse communities, low income, maybe many more immigrant communities as well, to bring in and embrace into the workforce, into living wage jobs, middle class and beyond. I can see also a strategic and systematic approach for students that come to us to identify where they want to go, what their needs are, and how best to help meet them, whether it's academic, whether it's career. But if a student comes to us and says, I think I want to go here, we help them to clarify that, and also we help to wrap the services around to get them there. And our system is streamlined so that more students make it through to completion. Also, you know, in the Portland region, when we take a look at data, we know that median household income increases during the economic recovery have not benefited all communities equally. There are significant disparities between majority white communities and, let's say, communities of color. We also see similar disparities in educational outcomes. And we know from research that there's a correlation there. So we do believe that it's our mission to work on eliminating, reducing those disparities when in PCC's outcomes, so that the entering class and the graduating class look pretty much the same. So that's the vision. That's what I would love to see. When you fast forward 5 years, it may take 5 years and 5 months, but.
That's wonderful. What's been the most surprising about your arrival in Portland?
Well, you know, we were in D.C. for 3 years, Melanie and I. And by the way, I want to thank Melanie for putting up with me all these years. And late nights, cold dinners. I mean, I guess we forgot how rainy it is here in the Northwest. And it was just, you know, we got used to the sun. I didn't think D.C. was sunny. Then I came back to the Northwest, and this winter was really, really soggy. But I have to say, I missed the fir trees. I even saw a banana slug and kind of ran up and hugged it almost. It was really, you know, there's certain ambiance here in the Northwest that you miss. I think, you know, definitely I'm getting used to the sort of the different funding mechanisms at the state level, local levies, bonds. That's a little bit different. Boy, we like ballot measures here, I think, in Oregon. I mean, there's a lot of, so that's different. Folks are real friendly. The smiles linger longer here in Oregon. You know, in D.C., you know, you hesitate just a tenth of a second at a red light. It's like everybody's honking behind you, and here the only honking we heard was from the geese down on the walkway where we live. So some cultural, some political differences and funding differences.
Just a little. Well, we're so happy to have a warm City Club welcome for you and to introduce you to the state of Oregon via our listeners, and you know what a wonderful audience that we have here today. For those of you listening on OPB, this is City Club of Portland's Friday Forum. I'm Cheryl Myers, Director of Culture and Inclusion for the Oregon Higher Education Commission, and I'm here with Mark Mitsui, the new president of Portland Community College, and he's sharing his vision for PCC. Mark, it's just been such a pleasure. So now let's go to the audience for some questions. And if you've written a question on an index card, hold it up high and staff will come by and collect it. You may also submit questions through Twitter using the hashtag Friday Forum. We'll try and read at least one index card and one Twitter question. And we invite City Club members to ask their questions at the microphone. Asking questions at the Friday Forum microphone is a benefit of City Club membership, and membership is open to everyone. Please identify yourself as a City Club member and ask one question in, okay, listen, 30 seconds or less, please. All right, let's go ahead and take our first question.
All right. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Hi, I am Raylene McMillan. I am a proud City Club member, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Government Relations at Portland State University, who is here today. President Mitsui, it's always such a pleasure to see you and to hear you speak. It's a veritable pleasure, and it makes me very excited for the direction PCC is going. As you know, I'm also a former lobbyist for PCC. I just barely missed an opportunity to work for you. My question does involve very quickly thanking you from the bottom of my heart, and this comes from the entire President's office, for PCC's partnership on the 4th and Montgomery Development Project, which also, as you know, boasts partnerships from OHSU and the City of Portland. So I'll go ahead and thank Mayor Wheeler here while he's in the room too. You alluded to to PCC's upcoming bond efforts, but what I would really love to hear is hear you expand on that. What should we see? What's in store?
Thanks, Raylene. And also, I'll out you as an alum of PCC. So very proud of you, Raylene. Thank you. So the project that Raylene mentioned is a partnership with the City of Portland, with OHSU, PSU's Public Health Division, and with our own dental program. We have a dental hygienist, dental technology program, and we're going to relocate using bond money from the previous bond to build out an area in partnership with OHSU and PSU. And we see a lot of great synergies there, partly for our students, right? Because they're going to be able to work with four-year students, particularly in the interprofessional space where so many healthcare teams are working together to provide coordinated oral care and health. In terms of, so that's 2008 bond dollars, an example of your taxpayer dollars at work, and fast forwarding to our bond measure in November. We have very targeted workforce investments. And for example, at the Metro Center, we're interested in the Workforce Education and Training Center rebuild there. There are a variety of different opportunities there to help create an escape velocity for families out of poverty through education and training. And so we've, for example, traveled to North Seattle Community College to look at the Opportunity Center for Education and Employment there as a potential model of integration of services. So DHS, Employment Security, WorkSource are all in the same building, along with the college, and integrate services and benefits around students to help them move into the middle class and out of poverty. There are also some healthcare related investments. So BioSim, I don't know if you've seen our BioSim lab or if you are familiar with it, but these are mannequins that, and you can vary their heart rate. You can give them all kinds of illnesses. They have all kinds of symptoms you have to diagnose. They can yell and scream. And so they're really, really effective learning tools in healthcare. We want more of these types of opportunities for our students. We also will be extending the lifespan of our buildings and, again, maximizing the investment that we have rather than rebuilding a lot. And looking at modernizing facilities, IT, as you know from this last WannaCry malware attack, cybersecurity and protecting our IT systems is always important, so that'll be one of the components as well. Those are some of the highlights of what we want to pursue in the next bond, and thinking through how can we, again, help bridge the skills gap and create opportunity.
Let's take a index card question. What are your thoughts on dual credit for high school students? Is it a strong affordability strategy, and what are the implications for higher education?
Oh, great question. Yeah. Well, definitely it is in part of because it depends on the arrangement between the school district and the higher education institution. So I'm from Washington State. That's the model I'm most familiar with, and there it's called Running Start. And the dollars do follow the student. They go from the K-12 to the community college. Students actually take college credit courses, and many now are earning both their high school credential and their associate's degree simultaneously or very close. That really knocks off a lot of tuition expense for the family. And so in taking a look at that, we also want to be mindful of equity and take an equity lens. That we want to make sure that with these kinds of models, that we want to ensure that there's as wide and as diverse and inclusive access to any dual credit model that's possible. So we have a program at Rock Creek called Early College that is very successful and has a pretty strong relationship with the local school district, and parents and students definitely benefit from that. We have a middle college model at Cascade with Jefferson High School, and Jefferson has been highlighted as a really impressive turnaround. So this partnership is I believe, part of that in terms of offering an opportunity for students. So there are different models that might fit different situations, but I think we want to maintain the criteria of equity there, student success. Now, there are some cities around the country where it's part of a pipeline. Long Beach, California, for example. And Harper College in Illinois uses dual credit as a way to sort of jumpstart the students. Gaining college credit reduces the amount of tuition they have to pay in order to progress to their associate's degree. So yeah, I think it's definitely an important strategy.
Thank you. Let's go back to the microphone.
Les Volstek, City Club member. Can you speak about your faculty? How do you recruit and retain faculty? And how do you find faculty able to continue in competence in their field with all the changes you've outlined in subject areas and skills and so forth?
Yes, well, absolutely. Faculty are critical to not only our day-to-day operation, but strategic vision moving forward. So in terms of the recruitment for, let's say, full-time tenure track faculty, we do the usual types of recruitment. We have hired a recruiter specifically to increase the diversity of our applicant pools, and reaching out into different networks in order to do that is one strategy. And in terms of the hiring process, there are hiring committees, there are a variety of different steps that applicants go through. And in terms of professional development, we have a professional organizational development unit under our HR office, and do have different opportunities for faculty, such as sabbatical, for example, to grow in their field. Could we do more? Yes. And particularly as we take a look at equity and inclusion within our institution, and as we take a look at student success. So I'm very interested in an evolutionary turn toward becoming a learning institution. And particularly, I've always thought in higher ed, it's a little ironic that sometimes we can be so busy with the mission, which is really critical, that sometimes it's easy to overlook our own professional development. So that is part of my work plan, and it won't happen overnight. We have to have resources to do it, but over time, I think we can make inroads there.
Thank you. Next podium question.
Carla Kelly, City Club member. I am thinking about a number of young people and not so young people I know who are trying to do degrees online through PCC. And maybe they're doing this because the classes don't fit with their work schedules. Maybe they're doing this because they don't have money for transportation. How do you keep those students connected when they're doing all of their academic work in a totally isolated environment? And what's your rate of graduation with people who are trying to do that?
Distance learning is becoming an increasingly popular and important part of our offerings. Our distance learning enrollment has grown by 283% since 2004. And we are experiencing consistent growth in that area. Part of the attraction of distance learning, particularly for busy parents and those who are working, is the asynchronous nature of it. They have more flexibility, right, in terms of getting their assignments in and taking exams. And I think that's part of the popularity. In addition to that, we know the opportunity cost of quitting work and going to school is quite high. And with the strong economy and the recovery, distance learning is a more viable option for a lot of students. Hybrid courses are a way to integrate the value of in-person class meetings with the convenience of distance learning modalities. And so those are also popular. We find that about 85% of our distance learning students actually live in our service area. And that growth has been within the service area, although we are growing also outside of our service area and outside of state. One of the most important elements, though, that our distance learning operation has contributed is professional development for faculty. Just because a teacher may be really strong in an in-person setting does not automatically make them strong online. And one of the things we have found is the importance of helping prepare faculty to teach in the online environment. So that's part of what we do. The same is true for students, right? That sometimes students have this image in their head, this is going to be a lot easier. I can slack on this. And in reality, that's not true. In fact, it may require more time. So the other thing we do is to help students prepare to learn in the online environment. So as we take a look at the future, particularly if students who traditionally attend a community college are pushed out even further, distance learning becomes an important strategy to help reach them.
Let's take one more audience question. How is PCC responding to the concern that many freshman students' first courses are remedial non-credit classes?
Yeah, I think that's an issue nationally. It is definitely challenging for students because they burn financial aid, right? Taking these remedial or developmental classes before they get to college level credits, and then they exhaust their financial aid. One of the things research tells us is, and what we used to do, decades ago, was we thought putting an additional developmental course there would help. And what research tells us is it actually will reduce the graduation rate if you have too long of a sequence. So what we've done is to start at the beginning, and that's at placement. That's assessment and placement. And so we are, as I mentioned earlier, revamping our assessment process and placement and beginning to place students that look like they could make it, they're kind of on the cusp, with some additional supports into that higher level course. And then assessing systemically how they're doing. The other piece is actual change in developmental math and developmental English. So we're looking at integrated reading and writing on the developmental English side and alternative pathways on the developmental math side. So we'll gather the data, we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if there are other strategies that we want to work with. But even though we need to change our dev ed system in this country, students do need developmental education. They're not at college level when they come to us.
All right, back to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name's Paul Anthony. I'm a City Club member, and I'm also on the board of Portland Public Schools. Could you please talk a little with the audience about the OMIC aviation program that you're developing at Walnut Creek and Scappoose, which I think has enormous potential for our students?
Oh, yep, great question. So with our 2008 bond dollars, we are in partnership out in Scappoose with the Oregon Manufacturing Innovation Center. And this is based on a model in Sheffield, England, where a coal town whose economy was dying developed an advanced manufacturing center and brought with it a lot of employers. And one of the things they learned there was that if you don't have skilled labor, in addition to the research breakthroughs, the employers aren't going to relocate. And so what we've done is to place our training center, at least this is in planning stages, our training center next to the research and development arm, so that R&D and training occur in close proximity in time and space. And we think that offers a couple of advantages. One, there's a less of a gap between the R&D breakthroughs and the implication for the training of skilled talent that will work to maximize the impact of those breakthroughs. And two-year students will be able to work in research with four-year students and get that synergy going and sort of the cross-fertilization that can occur between the students in both types of institutions. So very excited. We hope to break ground in the fall. We're still working on acquiring that property, but I have been in the planning phase for a while.
Excellent. Podium.
Hi, I'm Colin. I'm a City Club member. In 2011, the legislature set our 40-40-20 goals that 40% of Oregonians would have four-year degrees, 40% would have two-year degrees or certificates, and then 20% would have high school degrees. As we sort of get closer and closer to that 2025 deadline, folks, I think, are raising the question about whether or not that's achievable. And I think in this legislative session, there's particularly been a lot of talk about getting rid of those goals. Do you think they're achievable?
Well, we obviously want to make progress in that direction. And so we have to start with where we're at and identify that through data, and then implement strategies to move in that direction. So the systems are well underway. I would say the community college system, for example, is several colleges are engaged in a variety of different system-wide initiatives. There's also a student success center now that works statewide. And of course, individual campuses are also deploying different student success strategies. It's hard to know if that specific goal will be obtained, but the college, community is our middle name. We are pretty embedded with our local employers and with our community, and have a sense locally of how many more graduates, how many more do we need for that particular economy. So I'd say as a system, we are pretty well focused on moving the needle in that direction. Whether we can specifically get there statewide, I don't know. But if the intention was to spur us, to get us to move in a certain direction, then I can say we're definitely moving in that direction.
Yeah, and the HEC agency has a bill in session right now to address that in a more common sense perspective. Courtney, do we have time for one more?
I think I get to ask the last question. So my question is, Courtney Nelson, City Club member, and my question is, you came to us from Washington, D.C., and we obviously have a new administration. And so I'm curious as to what the new administration means for the Department of Education and how that's impacting our local community colleges.
Yes. So there are a variety of different elements to the president's first budget and now the second budget, one of which, of course, has to do with federal financial aid and a proposed reduction in federal financial aid by the administration. What was interesting after the skinny budget was released was the congressional response to it. And so while the president wanted a pretty large cut in education, Congress came back and said, I don't think so. And so there was a moderating effect there. And then when the appropriations, the omnibus was signed and agreed on, the end cuts were actually much, much smaller than were originally proposed. In fact, one of the new developments is what we now call fourth quarter Pell. So that's an additional $1,615 per Pell recipient that Congress inserted into the appropriations bill. So there's a counterweight, I think, to the administration's efforts. I think where any administration has the most impact is under executive action. And so those initiatives that, when I was with the Obama administration, because of some of the disagreements in Congress, we got really good at executive action. And that's a lot of what we did. And so, unfortunately, if you can implement through executive action, you can roll back through executive action. So I would say those are the things, the policy developments to keep an eye on, are what were those policy developments that were initiated through EO and other executive action, and what then could be at risk. Definitely we have an eye on it, but our associations, our national bodies also have an eye on it, and are in DC actively engaged in advocacy.
Well, great. Thank you so much. We're out of broadcast time for today and are going to have to stop. If this program has inspired you to join us here at City Club as a member, you can do so on your way out on the back. I'm Courtney Nelson, President of City Club. Please join me in thanking our Friday Forum Committee, Kurt Wabring, Bobby Regan, and Walter Robinson II for today's program. And a big welcome and thank you to our guests here today, President Mark Mitsui and Cheryl Myers. Thank you so much.